Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. Hope you're enjoying some relaxed restrictions in your various states and territories. We were going to be relaxed and then we tightened up again in Victoria, but we've still been able to go to the gym and have coffee in an actual coffee shop for the first time in a long time. I think for some Melburnians that's been the biggest hardship. So today we've got a really great panel. We're going to be talking all about data, and we don't have a discussion these days without data coming up. So we're going to get deep inside the hood and find out how the sausage gets made through the pipeline of the data delivery. So obviously this is our Shaping Future Transport webinar series, and it's ITS Australia. All of our members. We'd like to introduce the Department of Transport Victoria as a platinum member, which is awesome news. So great for you guys to come along. I know we've got a few people from the Department of Victoria on the line as well. And I see you've had some ministerial take-up, so we're looking forward to meeting your new Minister for Transport, Ben. I'm just going to kick off straight away. And so we've got John Cardoso from TomTom, Phil Allen from, John Cardoso from Intellimatics, Phil Allen from TomTom, Phil Scanlon from Solace, and Hannah, and I'm so sorry, Hannah, I didn't ask you how to pronounce your surname before we started, which was very stupid of me, but I will let you introduce yourself. And these guys are going to give some brief presentations, some with slides, some without, and then we're going to go to questions, because I'm sure you're going to have a lot of questions. So send them through, and when we get to the end of the presentations, I'll be asking the panel the questions that you've got. So, John, let me hand over the screen to you, and we'll kick off.
Thank you, Stacey. Can you guys see my screen?
Sure can.
Thank you. So I'm John Cardoso, Senior Product Manager from Intellimatics. For those who don't know Intellimatics, we've been in the traffic data business for around 12 years. We take a quite holistic approach on data. We combine the vehicle perspective with probes from vehicles in real time. We mesh that with the road perspective by bringing the sensors on the road into the mix, and then we enrich that with information from road authorities and emergency services. And on top of it, what we do is we use our historical models to make sure to validate the quality of the data and run like control groups in real time to make sure that everything is to the level of quality for our users. We also fully owned by the RSP group, and we know we are not exactly a household brand, but we've been in this business quite a long time, and we provide quite a bit of information of incidents on the road for 75% of the cars equipped with GPS. And you may have seen in this last year, and this artist collected a bunch of Android devices, and it dragged them through a street and allow him to hack Google Maps and show a very congested road and even like road closure when he was standing still in a particular area. And the reason that happened, and it was quite amusing for a lot of people that didn't imagine that was that easy to create such disruption for such a global service. But that happened because Google, as many other providers, when they're deciding the way to solve that particular problem, they have to account for velocity and scale. And they try to do that the best they can in terms of accuracy. So what they do is they count for a lot of mobiles in a given area, and that gives them a sense of how many cars are in the street, and they use that to create congestion alerts. But on the other hand, when they don't see any cars for a while, they may close that street. They may consider that road as closed, which cause a lot of false positives. So the challenge here is how you kind of give the right information to drivers. How do you know there is an incident on the road or there is a road closure, but at the same time you do it fast enough and within scale. So the challenge is you need to, when you try to look at reputable sources like emergency services and road authorities, you have many different options for each state, and each one of them issue the alerts in a particular way. So extremely fragmented and unstructured. And the solution for a lot of people is to use manual data entry. Like you put a person to read that and actually type in what it means. And when you try to bypass that process by using probe densities, there is a lot of false positive in a country like Australia that has continental size, but the population density of like a really small country. So what is the challenge like? How we approach that challenge with machine learning and artificial intelligence was to, on the very top left, you can see how a message can come. And that message usually has four different aspects. The type of incident, a description, a location, general location, a specific location. And the way that's structured, as you see, is human readable. A person can read and understand what's going on. But what we need that to scale is that machines can input, receive that and understand as well. So you break that down into a location that a machine can understand, and then you restructure those incident and cause into codes that are machine readable. How we did that was to go back to 4 years worth of data that we had created by humans, and that's called training set. This approach is, you may have seen in the news when Apple and Amazon have issues with privacy, is because they actually don't have training data. So what they do is they grab everything you say to Alexa and everything you say to Siri that doesn't get the right answer. They grab those false results and they send to humans to listen to that and type what you actually meant. So we didn't have to do that because we've been doing that for so many years. We already had the training set. So we use that training set to then read what was the original road authority message and how a human actually is split between cause, effect, and location. Then we create two separate work streams, and one work stream works on what happened and what was the consequence. And in that case, we use a decision tree where we could then test the possible cause, effects, and also account for misspellings, which are very common, and then create a structured interpretation. And the other work stream was trained specifically to find the right spot, to really identify that spelling and match that to a specific location on the road, because it's not enough to just say it was in a particular street. You really need to account for the exact location on that street. So what we got was three main features. That was from the human entry. There was a cause, effect, and location, where we simply distinguish that into the specific codes that can be interpreted by the human, by the machine, sorry. So accident becomes a 204 and a lane close become a 500 to tell how many lanes are closed, which is the effect, and what was the cause. And then we move into, sorry, it may look a bit complex, but it's not that complicated. So what you actually showing here is that in the pink area, you have actual operator doing the data entry of the information that goes to a broadcast to end users. And on the orange one, you have the actual machine taking over with a minimum target of 85% accuracy and replacing that the activity from the operator, the data entry person. And that's it. What happened after we trained and we got to that threshold of quality, we completely removed humans from the equation. We have now a fully automated process that what it does is take data from reputable sources and issue the alerts according with source that will validate it, like road authorities and emergency service, which reduce a lot the amount of false positives are virtually impossible to have a false positive, and at the same time has a high degree of accuracy. And the timeline between that message out and to get to a user is around 3 minutes. So we both achieve scale and velocity with accuracy by taking a different approach to incidents on the road. So by doing that approach, we have really rapid identification and response. We can alert users of high-risk areas. And in the beginning of the year, we had a massive challenge with bushfires where we worked with this emergency service, both Victoria, New South Wales, and with Google to ensure we had enough coverage for around 1,300 fires that were happening in the area at a given time. And also is understanding the incident that may happen from a variety of sources. So we cross-combine and we cross-validate from different sources to make sure that incident's still live. So that velocity with scale and reduce false positives makes our roads safer. It's really fast and also help to reduce the congestions on the road. The good news is that we start to make that data also widely available. By the end of this month, we are launching our platform where you're going to be able to drill down and investigate the data by yourself. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me. This is my contact. Happy to take any questions you may have. Thank you. Back to you, Stacey.
Thanks, John. That's super. It is incredible how much people are relying on the accuracy of this data currently, and I think that segues nicely to Phil at TomTom. So I'll hand the screen over to you, Phil, if you want to talk to us about what you guys are doing at TomTom.
Okay, thank you. So in TomTom, we can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so in TomTom, we gather GPS probe data globally. So we have over 600 million devices giving us data on a daily perspective. And this data is very broad. So Australia is fully covered, and this leads to over 3.5 billion kilometers of data coming in per day. So you cannot drive this yourself. So having probe data that comes in like this for over 80 countries gives us a very, very rich data set. So to date, since 2008, we now have 48 trillion GPS measurement points in our data. What's unique about TomTom is this is from multiple sources. We don't just take it from mobile. We have in-dash, permanently in-dash navigation systems through to in-trucks telematics devices, through to our own portable navigation devices, and of course mobile. So when you bring all that together from the various sources, you can validate the quality. So you don't get trapped like that example John gave you with Google showing 100 mobile phones in a little tray, right? Because we're validating what we know is actually in cars versus what's not. So this allows us to build very, very rich data sets. So we use this to build and maintain our map data sets on a daily basis. We use it for our live traffic, and we use it for creating traffic events. So what you see on the screen here is the GPS probe data comes in. It's matched to the correct road segment by looking at historically where the vehicle's coming from up until now. And we see that, and that becomes our traffic flow. And we deliver out of that both absolute speed and relative speed. So relative speed is relative to this current time of the day, and we compare that based against a speed profile, which is essentially the average speed for the last 2 years of data for each segment, for each road segment, for each 5 minutes of the day, each day of the week. And that's updated every 3 months. So we have what we know is what we expect, and then we're comparing against that. Then we're also looking at whether the traffic speed has dropped more than 56% of free flow, and then we create a traffic event. And then we monitor that event through its lifetime, and that becomes what we call a traffic incidence. And we also validate it against any journalistic data. So journalistic data might be a road controlling authority telling us about a planned roadworks, or being told information about an accident. So we link the two together, and therefore we have more context to that event. And then we analyze and predict how that event is trending, whether it's getting worse, significantly worse, stabilizing, starting to improve, significantly improving. And we predict every 1 minute where we think that event's going to be in the next 15, 30, and 45 minutes, when it's going to close. So this is what it looks like. When this data is coming in, we're seeing all these little arrows you see traveling along the road. We can then see this red panel, and the orange is traffic events that we have recognized. And we're then monitoring this for the speed throughout that event, what it might be, the level of congestion. In this case, it's been highlighted as roadworks. We then can see the flow capacity in this dark blue line. The red line shows you the actual live speed. And if you look down the bottom, you're seeing all the traces of each vehicle, and that's showing us how large this congestion jam is. And what we can see is that the tail on the left side is shrinking, so therefore it's improving, and the tail is getting shorter and shorter. So that's how we see in a very live traffic incident in our system and what's happening. Okay, so combining map data with live data, with then the ability to store this data. And if you think about it, in Australia, we have now 12 years of data stored in 15-minute time bins across every road, whether it's a rural road, a minor road, a major highway. We can do our historical data, which is called our traffic stats. We can analyze that road based on either a route or an area to create analytics, looking at speeds and travel times. And we also have probe count. So probe count tells us about the density, the change in volume on the roads. We can then undertake origin destination analysis. So we can go in and create different zones, and the zones can be like neighborhoods, suburbs. We can do it for geomarketing. We can do it for transport flow analysis, looking at where are people coming from and going to, for example, into the CBD or to an airport at what times of the day, and look at the number of trips. And then the last thing, of course, we can do route monitoring, where we create a custom route and we monitor that route throughout the period and looking at each segment along the route. So we're not just interested in the total route time, but we're interested in each segment along that route. And you can monitor 20, 50, 100 routes across the city and monitor those and display those in a customized dashboard. So that's the sort of thing you can do with this data. And then here is a final slide that I thought would be interesting. So to show that if you take historical data and look at the current now, this is something one of our clients did called Kato.com. And they looked at our 2019 data against COVID in early April. So it's comparing the same week in 2 different years, and you can see the different patterns. So you can see like Paris, which had quite significant congestion, compared to it's just fallen away right now. Right down to the bottom where you see Sydney, where the congestion levels dropped by about 50% only. Or take example, Yuan, where basically they eliminated all traffic. So, and even Bangalore, which had massive amounts of traffic, which you know, Bangalore, and cut it right down. So these are nice things that you can do between taking your live data, looking at that against your historical, and doing those types of analytics. So hope that helps.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. It's going to be amazing, and we'll get to Hannah from a research perspective what this extraordinary K-shaped data can do for better understanding what happens and what will be happening over the next period of time while we resolve what's going on with COVID. So that segues us nicely to Phil from Solace, can talk to the macro and micro of what you can do with this events data. So I'll hand over to you, Phil. And
all right. You seeing my slide? Do you see a slide with Solace on it, or a blank?
it's just blank.
Yeah, bear with me 1 second.
Hannah, let me take a stab. Grzybowska?
Grzybowska. Very well
Grzybowska.
done.
Okay.
It's like a password.
All
That's
right.
great. Well, yeah, we've got it now.
Seeing my screen now. Apologies about that. All right, so yes, Phil from Solace. We're not as deeply into the transport domain as everyone. We're kind of across many different industries, and what we really do is just one thing. We build event backbones for real-time enterprise. And when I talk about event, just to clarify, an event for us is someone getting on or off a bus, someone buying something on a shop. Someone sort of tapping on or tapping off a transport system, but we do then get used to the title of this webinar to kind of look at managing crisis like an event. I'll talk a little bit later on about how one of our customers uses our backbone to power a lot of their crisis management systems so that they can manage the changing world quite effectively. So we've been working with many of the world's organizations, it's specifically in transport and logistics. We do work with the FAA, with Eurocontrol, with the Canadian Air Traffic Management. They're obviously quite quiet at the moment, but previously we were helping basically distribute and disseminate all of the aircraft movements or notice to airmen. So as there were disruptions on the flight network, we were the backbone to distribute that information in real time to anyone who is interested. We talk also about real time. We have done some work with, we started off real time in the financial services capital markets, where people talk about real time as being, millisecond, microsecond. Obviously, that's not applicable for some of the use cases, but real time for us really just means getting the information to the people that need it as soon as you can get it to them without delays of going through systems. So when an event happens in one part of your network, it is very quickly delivered to the next part. So looking at how we actually achieve that, we work in three main areas with our customers. The first, if you think of becoming event enabled as a journey, the first thing people think about is, well, they've got all these existing systems where they have events, they have things that are happening, but they're usually locked into those systems. So the first thing we do is we liberate those events. We can help listen in databases, listen in tables, listen in in things that are happening, and start creating events and publishing those events onto our event infrastructure. Secondly, then we have people who are then looking to then start modernizing platforms and also do things with IoT devices. So you may have a lot of device sensors, a lot of information, but it's only useful when you combine it with some things that are going on in your existing applications. And then finally, when you look at taking all of your events, the value moment for an event is when you take it through to a partner, a customer, or to another part of your business. So, an event happening in one organization is very valuable to other parties, as long as you can get it to them in a good amount of time. So I'll talk a little bit about a couple of our customers who've been doing this for a while. So just for background, I was based in Sydney, Australia till about 7 years ago. I've just spent the last 7 years in Singapore. And recently relocated very fortuitously, timing-wise, to Brisbane in January this year. So just pre-COVID. So I was very fortunate there from that move. So just wanted to talk a little bit about what's been happening in Singapore over the past sort of 7-8 years while I was there, and really the benefits of living in a smart city. They have invested very heavily into smart transport, smart information for citizens. And one of the challenges that we helped them with going back to 5-6 years was around smarter buses. So information on the display signboards, information on the mobile apps was based on predictive models. So what would happen is, if everything was going to plan as per the predictions, the buses would turn up on time. But it's quite embarrassing when you say a bus is turning up and it doesn't turn up. And that was the problem they sort of started off to solve. So they put on some instrumentation on the buses, and this meant that they knew in real time where every bus was. But they also did some other sensors to know when doors were opening and closing, to know when people were tapping on and tapping off, obviously the position and speed. So all of those buses are connected in real time to Solus. And what Solus then does is feeds information into analytics engines, into systems like an Intellimatics, for them to be able to put them through models to work out what's going on. So think of us as the nervous system, and Intellimatics as the brain. So this nervous system then feeds information not just to the core processing systems, but if I have a citizen waiting at a bus stop, they can register and say, hey, I'm interested in buses in my area. Then the event goes straight from the bus straight to the citizen's handset. So there's no kind of processing, no filtering, no data, no applications required to do that. It's all based on people subscribing to information and events being emitted. So through that, they're able to obviously change all of the display boards from predictive to actual real time, so showing passenger loads. So now in a time of COVID, if a citizen wants to see how many passengers are on board a bus before they go and wait and queue for it at the bus stop, they can get that information. It's not predictive, it's not what we think might happen, it's actually actual numbers on the buses. So if you compare that to some of the smart smart transport systems that have been seen over the years in other places, it's obviously a big difference. So obviously that increased the wait times. The other thing that we did past that was with a system called Faster, and this is really where you kind of combine. We sort of work very much in the real time, but there is a very big need for predictive. There is very big need for models, because you need to sort of show what is going to happen. But when things are happening, you want to show what's happening. So Faster was a system put in place to be able to respond faster to events on the Singapore transport network. And what they used were things like Wi-Fi sensors in train stations, on platforms, to not to know who people were, but to know how many unique mobile devices were around. So based on that information, they're able to push it through into models. They're able to do things like calculate end-to-end journey times. They're able to look at, if there was an incident in a train station or a bus stop, they would see a large number of devices. So they would be able to start inferring some of these things. But what also they would know was when if a segment of rail was broken, they would know how many passengers they've got at the train who are waiting to take that. They could dispatch buses in advance, but they could also send information in real time to the information dashboards and to any citizens using the mobile data apps to let them know what alternate arrangements were being made to be able to work around disruptions on the network. So one of the things that we bring into that is obviously with disruptions, that's usually where data volumes go up when things are very what we call bursty. And one of the things we do very well is handle bursty traffic. So that was Faster. SDX is something similar. I know we're limited on time, so I'll just briefly mention SDX. It's where we help move sensor data from one agency to another. So if you think about each agency having a whole lot of sensors, a whole lot of events that they create, those are obviously of interest to other agencies. So rather than having many agencies having sensors on lampposts, for example, you have one agency that pushes the information out to anyone who's interested in it. And SDX was a sensor data exchange, a way of exchanging information between different agencies, obviously governed and managed with obviously data privacy, data security around that, but to be able to have the flow of real-time event data across the entire nation. Okay. Mentioned very briefly as well, we're doing a project around electronic road pricing. So like TomTom in vehicles, in Singapore, you have a smart device that captures real-time location that's sent to the LTA in real time, and they use all that information for things like real-time road pricing, road tolling, for other services around that. So there is plenty of information that also on our website if you're interested. So I just want to end there and hand it back to Stacey.
Thanks, Phil. I know a lot of people in Australia enviously look to Singapore's road pricing scheme, and it's certainly a conversation that's coming up a lot at the moment. Let me share my screen. So we've got some questions coming in, but Hannah, I'm going to hand over to you as somebody that takes all of this data and uses it to design and build research projects and deployments to get people to make better decisions. Let's talk about what you're doing at Data 61.
Sure. I provide a slightly different angle to the conversation. I'm a senior research scientist at Data 61 CSIRO. I'm part of the Transport Analytics Group, and our mission is to provide scientifically sound data-driven solutions for smart planning, implementation, and management of infrastructure and future transport. We are mainly focusing on providing excellence in research, but we have very, very strong connections with national and international transport agencies and corporates, industry bodies, university and research institutes. And our partnerships are our way to advance the science and create impact in this very fast growing and changing technology space, which is transport. We are very focused on application-based research studies. We want to make an impact in the real world, and we try to deliver smart tools which can be easily used and implemented in practice. There are 4 teams within the Transport Analytics Group, just to introduce ourselves very quickly. We hold an extensive expertise and experience in data analytics, and that includes researchers, data scientists, but also engineers, software engineers mainly. We have artificial intelligence team. They are focusing on prediction, machine learning, and data analytics. We have transport platforms team. They are responsible for supporting us in research and building and maintaining our data and services platforms and supporting the research by delivering advanced tools and products. Some of them can be commercialized in the future. There is a Data City team. They are driving the research in structural health monitoring and data analytics for asset management. And the last but not least, there is Intelligent Mobility team, and I act as a lead for this particular team. We are mainly working with simulation and optimization techniques to understand the mobility in smart city environments. We are looking not only at traffic and how it could be improved, but also at the newest mobility options, like, for example, autonomous vehicles, on-demand services, e-scooters, etc. We want to understand how they will affect the travel patterns. We focus on integration of traffic simulation with machine learning and advanced data analytics. We would like all those elements to work seamlessly together and inform each other. My background is in simulation and optimization, and my research is very strongly application-based and application-driven. As a team, we work on a number of projects together with industry and government, and we are supporting them in strategic and planning decisions, but also we are helping them and providing feedback for operational challenges as a result of the data analytics and modeling and simulation. So I think it is fair to say that I am the end user of the data. I like, as a scientist, I like the data sets to be as large as possible, as detailed as possible, and in its original raw state. So then I can use this data in order to build, validate, and calibrate models with very high fidelity for base case analysis, but also it allows me to create a whole set of what if scenarios that once I run in simulation can provide very interesting insights and in effect provide support to my collaborators who very often happen to be the decision makers. As a researcher, I can be very creative and play with a lot of hypothetical futures and hypothetical scenarios, for example, around the context of autonomous vehicles. And other novel mobility options which have not been yet implemented. So this allows me to understand what will be the impact once we have those options implemented and what needs to be done in order to make them successful. So this is a high-level overview. That's what we do with the data, and that's why we collaborate very, very closely with industry and governments to further things, not only for the industry and for the application, but also to find new, very interesting findings in research.
Thanks, Hannah. Yeah, it's very important that we continue to delve into the data to develop those evidence bases to make appropriate decisions. Often we do policy by gut, or determine things by gut, and we're often very wrong. That's one of the questions that's come through. In fact, that you talked about real time, all of you've discussed real time data a lot, but a lot of the models are built on the predictive data sets. With the massive change that we're seeing, is there still value in the legacy data? It's open to anybody.
Yes, what we see in the market is actually people don't want 2020 data because of the skew due to COVID. Everybody talks to us about having access to 2019 data to use as a baseline to understand what to actually expect from the roads in normal conditions. So I think the previous models or legacy models still they are more relevant than ever.
And from our perspective, from our perspective, we probably have about 70% of clients use historical data over live data, you know, for analytics. And we talk analytics meaning yesterday, last week, last month, last year, right? So there's a very high focus for analytics and trying to understand the trends and the patterns going forward. Thanks.
For you, Phil, the very specific question that's come through, you referenced the queue length. There's an example of 800 meters. What's the level of accuracy of that?
For us, queue meter, generally around 10 meters. Oh, sorry, is it? In TomTom's data anyway, our queue length and jam delay is around 10 to 15 meters is the accuracy.
Okay. So looking at the way that the data... Sorry, Phil. Yeah.
Sorry, Stacey. There was a queue. There's a mention about a waiting time for 3 to 7 minutes on my slide. Was that, or was it more about the queue length in TomTom?
It was a queue length, yeah.
Okay.
So what's the accuracy from your perspective, Phil?
Yeah, so just to go back to the previous question, I mean, I think the historical, it always depends what you're doing with the data. So if you're trying to build a model, it's like, you know, what is that model trying to show you? I think in recent times, you know, historical data is far better for predicting what the normal world would work like. But I think the challenge is if the usage of your data is to make real-time decisioning, you know, if you're operating a road transport network, if you're deciding whether to, you know, activate signs that say the speed should be 60 miles an hour instead, or 60 kilometers an hour instead of 80 kilometers an hour, because you know there's congestion up front, then you don't want predictive anywhere near that. You need real time. You need what's happening now. So I think there's always a case for both. And I think, you know, as the output, a lot of these predictive models is, they have a deployment in real time where you have here's predictive, but here's a real time feed of what's happening, and if it's matching, then you know you make decisions on that. So I think you know, I think the use of the data is very relevant when looking at how it's being used.
Yeah, we talked before about that, the trust requirement. So for real time, people think of real time as being real time, and they see dots on their phone and think that that's an accurate representation of what's happening in the real world. But often there's a mix of predictive and real time. So having that trust for the customer and the network, especially when you're dealing with something like a transport network, which is obviously critical infrastructure. So some of the data that you've got, and Hannah, you worked with the Department of Transport on developing the evidence base for their Northern Beaches on-demand trial. So these are the kinds of event data that you've been using?
Yes, absolutely. So for me, this project was very exciting because looking all over the world, different pilots for on-demand services have been deployed, but they didn't survive after the pilot time, and this one did. So it's still going strong, it's working, and it seems it's really, really appreciated by the community. But yeah, from the data management side, there were a lot of challenges because people could book the services through the phones, through their mobile apps, through a web page, etc. So there were challenges when it comes to managing it and managing it fast, so that the service could be provided, you know, right on time when it's needed.
So how granular does the data need to be to do that real mapping at the curbside to understand at a detailed level where the vehicles are, how the people are moving around? Some people have been talking on the questions with regards to using video analytics as well, and we've done heat mapping to test patronage on transport. Are all of those new data sets coming in? Are there different streams that you're looking at? I think from TomTom and Solace and telematics as well.
From a TomTom perspective, we are processing data every 30 seconds in real time. So we do have latency from some of our suppliers because we have so many suppliers, all these different car brands, our own devices and mobile and that. So typically there's a latency of around 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, but the data is processed every 30 seconds and delivered to customers every 1 minute. In historical, we store the data in 15-minute time bins. And that allows you to be able to do analysis because there's no point trying to store it in little small, like 1 minute, 5 minute. 15 minutes is suitable for doing detailed analysis. So we find that that's appropriate and people can, in our platforms, aggregate that. So if you want to look at it 30 minutes or hourly, 2 hourly, quarterly, whatever it might be, you can do that.
Yeah, it's similar with the telematics. Is usually on data ingestion is every 30 seconds. Data delivery, the standard usually is 15-minute bins, but it can go down to 3 minutes bin for special projects. And again, is the balance between how much data is enough and how much data is too much and becomes noise.
I suppose the same for you, Phil, at Solace, that depending on the product that you're building.
No, so we are real time. So the second, so that there's two different types of latency. If you've got a bus moving along, they generally, they're not processing or publishing their location every second. It's usually every 5 seconds that they'll say, this is where I am. There is intelligence on the bus. If it's not moving, then it doesn't need to really keep transmitting its location. If it goes into a tunnel and it's out of range for 10 seconds, there's no backlog of data. It only sends its latest event as it comes out the tunnel. The difference with Solace, I mean, it's all around real-time distribution of data. So that you have a publisher that publishes bus location for bus 1, 2, 3. I could have 10 subscribers sitting at a bus stop who are interested in that event, and Solace manages those subscriptions. So usually within, with network latency, using mobile networks, usually within 5 or 10 milliseconds, the event will have gone from the bus straight to the consumer's handheld. The real-time systems, the real-time display boards would get similar latencies. So if someone's interested in a raw event, they will get that. But in the LTA, when they take in, they'll take in that stream of events, they will infer some intelligence, they will infer some things. So they might not publish out congestion things until they detect something, but that would then get published to the same infrastructure. People who are interested in delays, traffic would get that in real time, which is usually it's sub-second. Even if you're on a slow network. I mean, Singapore is unique as a country. It's a very small city-state. They've had fiber optic to the house for the last 10 years. The mobile telephone network coverage is phenomenal. It's very difficult to be outside of range. So they've pretty much got the infrastructure side that we sit on top of very well covered. But that's you can, in the cities of Australia where you have similar transport management challenges, the infrastructure is not hugely different, so it's as applicable.
I was watching the Ruby Rose inquiry, and the QC was complaining about the NBN for the video feed because they were doing a remote. I think everyone working from home as well is struggling through that too. We've just got a few minutes left, so I just might just whip around, and if you've got anything that you want anyone in the audience to respond to, I've got a bunch of requests for people to be introduced, so I'll make sure I share those contacts with you. But Hannah, what are you currently working on, or can people go to your Data 61 website and check out for themselves?
Sorry, could you repeat the question? I didn't hear well.
If you've got anything to tell the audience about what you're working on that they might want to look into, or if they just go to your website, like Data 61, and check it out.
Yes, absolutely. We have all our projects list on the website. From the research perspective, what I am working on and very, very interested in is right now looking at the pandemic and the COVID situation. We are pretty much in an uncharted area when it comes to travel patterns, and the economy is being affected, our lives are being affected, the way we travel work is being affected. So as a researcher, I'm very interested looking at those aspects, but also when it comes to public transport, I'm very curious how we can, bring everything back to normal, and encourage people, to go back and start using public transport, and what is the impact of various measures that we could apply in order to make things safe for everyone and efficient. So this is like the most recent project that I've been looking at, and access to the most recent data in comparison to the historical data. But the most recent data for me that's the biggest challenge, trying to get access to it and understand it and interpret it and figuring out what the future would be, because we're really hoping that we will be, back to where we used to be very quickly, and hopefully that will happen, but we still don't know, right? Looking at what's happening in Melbourne and all over the world, those are still questions that from the research perspective, those are the things I most recently have been, thinking about.
Thanks, Hannah. So, John, you were shaking your head. I think we agree that maybe going back to normal is not something we necessarily want.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's going to be feasible anytime soon, and we're probably going to change the way we live our lives to adjust to this new reality. So yeah, it's important to understand how it's changing the behaviors, and probably what we're going to see is higher traffic and movement within the suburbs and opportunity for the commerce to flourish decentralized, but we need to continue to look at the data.
Yeah, I think I'm actually working on a research proposal that I get in contact with you about, Hannah. Like, how do we protect the public transport network going back? So Phil from Solace, we've got some people that have asked to be introduced to all of you, so I'll make sure I share those contacts. But I know you've got a microsite URL up there, but is there anything else that you're up to?
No, I mean we've as I mentioned, we're across many different areas of business. I mean, I think the question we get a lot is, real time, because we've done work in the capital markets. It's low latency, sub-microsecond. Is that what I have to use? Is that if I want to use Solace, do I have to be that sort of customer? We don't. We have customers that do parcel tracking. We do work with shipping companies where their latency is tracking ships. It's in seconds. And we have infrastructure that you size to the use case. We do even have freely usable technology, so you don't have to even buy technology off Solace to use our technology. We try and make it available so that people can run pilots, get into production with a small scale. When I talk small scale, 10,000 messages per second kind of volumes, without having a commercial relationship with us. So we're happy to help. We're seeing a lot of customers that are looking at systems like the more modern ways people are building technologies with the likes of Uber, with Google, with Facebook. The way that they build things is very different, and technologies like ours are very aligned to that way of thinking, which is event-driven thinking. So we're trying to help educate people on how they can leverage that to improve their customer experience. So please do reach out.
Excellent, thanks, Phil. And Phil from TomTom.
Sure. A lot of focus obviously has been around COVID over the last few months, because it's really put a focus on traffic and traffic analytics. So that's taken a lot of our attention lately, but we see a lot of activity around mobility, last mile, understanding routing better, origin destination activity. And another area of getting a lot of focus for us around is intersection analysis, understanding the movements through intersections and traffic lights, and understanding the delay times and being able to automate that.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We've gone a little bit over, but I think it's a incredibly fascinating topic, and we'll be needing more data to make better decisions going forward, because we all need to get out of our houses eventually. So thanks for joining me, and thanks for everyone. I'll be sharing those contact details around, and hopefully you can all get in contact, whether in real life or online in the near future. So check out our website for the recording after this. If you any colleagues miss it, it'll be available in an hour or so. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Stay well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.